This year, you're not really welcome. That's what my daughter Anna said when I called to ask what time to arrive for Mother's Day. I'd been coming for 15 years with homemade cake and flowers from my garden. But this year, I wasn't close enough family. What Anna didn't know was that for those same 15 years, I'd been paying $2,200 of her mortgage every month. $400,000 total, in secret. The next morning, I canceled the payment. They say Mother's Day is meant to honor the woman who gave everything. But this year, when I arrived with flowers and a homemade cake, my daughter met me at the door with a shrug and said, "This year, you're not really welcome." I didn't argue. I didn't cry. I just turned around, walked to my car, and smiled. Because what she didn't know was that the mortgage check they depended on every month came from me. The next morning, I made a silent phone call. You need to find out what happened next. But before we continue, tell us where you're reading from. I've measured my worth for 40 years and patched books and counted lunches. As a librarian at the oldest high school in Freiburg, I learned to divide a modest salary between mortgage, tuition fees, and unexpected car repairs after my husband Klaus died of a heart attack when the kids were still in middle school. I brought the same lunch every day, half a sandwich, an apple, and water in a thermos, and saved the cafeteria money penny by penny for my retirement. When Anna married Lucas 15 years ago, they couldn't afford the colonial house they dreamed of in the suburbs of Lindenberg. I offered what I had. Half my retirement savings for the down payment, my name as guarantor on the mortgage, and a monthly check that covered most of the payment, without them ever asking where the money came from. I wanted them to feel successful without feeling diminished by my help. For 13 Mother's Days, I came to their house with the same gift, a homemade blackberry cake, Anna's favorite from childhood, and fresh flowers from my garden, nothing fancy but grown with love. Each year, the reception grew colder. Last year, Anna left my cake in the kitchen while serving a store-bought cheesecake. My bouquet ended up in a plastic cup while professional flower arrangements adorned the table centerpiece. When Sophie asked for another piece of Grandma's cake, Anna laughed and said, "You don't have to be polite, honey. We have real dessert." Small gestures, small wounds, yet each was another stone in the wall between us. Still, I kept sending the monthly checks. I tended the roses I planted in their garden every spring. I believed that love given without expectation would one day be returned. This year, I baked the cake with special care, with wild blackberries I'd gathered myself on the paths of the Black Forest. Some things are worth the effort, even when gratitude seems uncertain. This year you'd better not come. The cake was cooling on my counter, the braided crust golden and glistening with sugar. Outside, my garden swayed with mayflowers, lilies, and even a few late daffodils. Perfect for a small bouquet. Mother's Day was tomorrow, and I hadn't heard from Anna about when I should come. I wiped the flower residue from my hands and picked up the phone, dialing the number I knew by heart. 3 rings, then Anna's voice, somewhat hurried. "Mom, I'm busy right now." "I just wanted to know when I should come tomorrow," I said, keeping my tone light. "I've baked your favorite cake and thought I'd bring some flowers from the garden." A pause. The muffled sound of her hand covering the receiver, voices in the background. Then, "This year we're doing something different." I wedged the phone between my shoulder and cheek while I pulled plastic wrap over the cake. "What are you planning?" "Well, Lucas's mother is organizing something at her country club. It's very exclusive, members only, you know?" "I see," I said, though I didn't. "And when will we meet there?" A longer pause. "You know, Mom, this year it's just for us. Close family. Lucas's parents, us, the kids." "I don't understand," I murmured. My hand froze on the counter. "Am I not close family?" "You know what I mean," Anna sighed, impatience in her voice. "Lucas's father just had that heart attack scare. His mother wants to celebrate it properly. It's her club, her rules. I could see you afterward." Then I suggested, "For coffee or dessert? I made your favorite cake." "Mom," she interrupted, "this year you're not really welcome." "Nothing personal. It's just easier this way. The kids will be sure to call you." The kitchen seemed to shrink around me. The walls moved closer as her words took shape. "Not welcome. Not wanted. Not needed." "I understand," I repeated, surprised at how firm my voice sounded while something inside me broke in two with a dry crack. "Well then, I wish you a lovely day." Thanks for understanding." Her voice was colored with relief, as if I'd postponed a lunch date, not accepted being uninvited from a day meant to honor mothers. "I have to go. We're just ordering the table decorations for tomorrow." The line went dead before I could respond. I carefully placed the phone in its station, as if it might shatter with a careless touch. Or perhaps I was the one who suddenly felt fragile. Outside my kitchen window, the garden displayed its silent spring splendor, untouched by the conversation that had just completely reordered my view of my place in Anna's life. A robin landed on the feeder I'd filled that morning. Its red plumage glowed against the green background. "Not welcome," I whispered into the empty kitchen. The words hung in the air, took shape, gained weight. I walked to the refrigerator, opened it, and stared inside without really seeing anything. The cake would keep. The flowers would continue to bloom whether I cut them or not. Plans could change, but the realization of how my daughter valued me had a permanence that wouldn't dissolve with politeness or generous interpretations. My neighbor Gerda called out a greeting from her garden on the other side of the fence. Reflexively, I raised my hand, a smile on my lips, though my eyes remained dry. "Everything okay, Elizabeth?" she asked, her brow furrowed with concern. Nothing escaped Gerda despite her 76 years. "Everything's fine," I replied, "just finalizing plans for tomorrow." "Mother's Day at Anna's, as always?" she asked, garden shears hovering in the air. "Not this year," I said, the words foreign in my mouth. "They have other plans." Her expression changed. Recognition and indignation flashed across her face. She'd known me since I moved to the neighborhood after selling the family house. She'd seen me write monthly checks for Anna's gift fund. She'd heard my excuses for canceled visits and forgotten birthdays. "Come by for tea later," she offered, an invitation that carried more weight than the sentence suggested. "Maybe," I replied, grateful but not yet ready for the conversation that would follow, one in which Gerda would speak aloud what I'd refused to admit to myself for years. Inside, I moved through my small house with meticulous precision, arranging already clean surfaces, folding freshly washed laundry, aligning books on shelves that never knew disorder. The rituals of order had carried me through Klaus's illness, the years of single parenting, retirement, and the quiet rebuilding of my life's meaning. In my study, the formerly smallest room now used for correspondence and organizing files for the historical society where I volunteered, I opened the bottom drawer of the filing cabinet. The folder labeled Anna's House lay exactly where I'd filed it 15 years ago, the edges still firm despite the time. Inside were the documents that had shaped my retirement, the guarantor contract for the mortgage, the schedule of monthly transfers from my account to theirs, the deed with my name next to Anna and Lucas Miller's. Papers that documented my silent, unannounced, unconditional commitment. Until now, I put on my reading glasses and went through the numbers that had determined my household for 15 years. Their mortgage of $2,200 monthly, nearly $400,000 over the years, not counting the initial down payment, money I never mentioned, sacrifices of small comforts I never counted, help given silently, thanks never expressed, because the gift itself was never acknowledged. The afternoon light fell through the blinds, casting striped shadows on the documents spread before me. Outside, Gerda had stopped pruning and gone into her house. The neighborhood settled into the quiet rhythm of a Saturday afternoon. Children's laughter in the distance. A passing car, a lawnmower a few houses away. I carefully gathered the papers and placed them back in the folder. Then I opened my laptop, the one Sophie and Max had taught me to use last Christmas, patient with their grandmother's slow exploration of technology. My online banking site loaded after 2 careful attempts with the password. The automatic transfer was programmed for the 15th of each month. It had occurred in principle for months without interruption, a digital flow of support that flowed from my account to theirs. A few clicks would stop that flow, and the arrangement that had enabled their comfortable lifestyle while I lived frugally and modestly. The cursor hovered over the button. Cancel automatic payment. Not out of anger. The initial pain of Anna's rejection had passed. Now I felt something colder, clearer. This wasn't punishment. It was consequence, aligning my resources with the reality my daughter had declared. If I wasn't welcome, if I wasn't enough family to be invited on Mother's Day, Perhaps I also wasn't enough family to finance their mortgage. The robin returned to my feeder, this time with its mate. They took turns pecking at the seeds, a dance of mutual support. I clicked the button. A confirmation screen appeared, asking if I was sure I wanted to cancel the recurring payment. Was I sure? After 15 years of automatic devotion, automatic sacrifice, automatic acceptance of the place assigned to me in Anna's life? Yes, I said aloud in my empty study. I'm sure. I confirmed the cancellation, then opened my contact list. Jürgen Schneider's name, the lawyer who'd helped me reorganize my finances after Klaus's death, was still there. He'd also guided me through the process when I signed as guarantor years ago. It was too late to call his office, but I could leave a message. Monday would be early enough to start what came next. The cake still sat on the counter, perfect and untouched. Tomorrow I decided I would take it to the senior center where I volunteered. The flowers would brighten someone else's day, and the money I'd set aside for next month's mortgage payment would stay in my account. For the first time in 15 years, I would keep what I'd earned, for myself. I felt neither triumph nor satisfaction, only a strange lightness, as if I'd set down a heavy basket I'd carried so long that I'd forgotten how heavy it was. The payment cancellation confirmation glowed on my laptop screen. The blue success message seemed to have a life of its own. I closed the laptop with a gentle click and sat still in my desk chair, hands folded in my lap like a schoolgirl waiting for instructions. Years as a librarian had taught me the value of silence. Observing instead of reacting, letting the silence speak for itself. And this silence said much about choices made years ago and undone minutes before. The phone on the desk, an old-fashioned landline, I kept despite Anna's constant mockery, seemed to watch me patiently like a confessor. Jürgen's office was closed until Monday, but his answering service would record what I said. It was the first step toward what would follow. I picked up the receiver and dialed, listening to the familiar tones until the professional voice of the service answered. "This is Elizabeth Weber," I said, surprised by the firmness of my voice. "I'd like Mr. Schneider to call me back regarding the co-ownership agreement for the Miller's house. It's not urgent, but I'd appreciate speaking with him Monday morning if possible." Simple, almost banal words. Nothing indicated they mark the end of a 15-year arrangement that had shaped 3 lives. 4, if you counted Lucas, who presumably had no idea where the mortgage payments really came from. After hanging up, I went into the kitchen on autopilot, put water on for tea I didn't really want, but that offered soothing routine. Through the window, I watched the afternoon fade in my garden. The azaleas that Klaus had planted the year before his heart attack bloomed faithfully every spring. The bird feeder was empty as dusk fell. The cake sat accusingly on the counter. I covered it more carefully with plastic wrap and put it in the refrigerator, unable to throw away something made with such care, despite its rejection. Tomorrow, other hands would cut into it. Other voices would express gratitude. The thought brought more relief than sadness. Monday morning came with the crisp efficiency of early spring. I was on my second cup of coffee when the phone rang at exactly 9:15 a.m. Jürgen Schneider's name appeared on the display, punctual as always, a quality I'd always appreciated in our previous dealings. "Mrs. Weber," he said with the warm, formal tone of old acquaintances. "I received your message and email. I see you're considering a significant course change." "Yes," I nodded, settling into my kitchen chair. "Perhaps it's long overdue." "May I ask what motivated this decision after 15 years of arrangement?" The question was fair, though the answer was more complex than could be easily explained. Let's say I've realized the implicit terms of our arrangement are no longer being honored. It's time for some adjustments. Jürgen made a neutral sound, like a man who'd witnessed enough family dramas not to judge prematurely. "I've reviewed your file. The good news is that the contingency clause we inserted gives you solid legal grounds to withdraw from the mortgage agreement. Your share as co-owner can also be dissolved without complications." "And the practical implications?" I asked, though I knew the answer. "Without your monthly contributions, the Millers will immediately face a deficit. The bank will send notices after the first missed payment. After 3 consecutive missed payments, foreclosure proceedings would begin unless they secure alternative financing." The clinical description of what was coming made it sound simpler than it would be. Equally clinical was my tone when I answered. "Understood. How do we proceed?" For the next 20 minutes, Jürgen explained the necessary steps: documents to sign, notifications to send, deadlines to meet. His tone remained carefully neutral throughout, though I sensed a note of respect I hadn't heard in our earlier conversations. Perhaps he'd seen enough entitled adult children to appreciate when a mother finally set boundaries. "I'll have the documents couriered to you this afternoon," Jürgen concluded. "Once you've signed and had them notarized, the process takes about 3 business days. The bank will send formal notification to the property address immediately after." "Thank you, Jürgen," I said, feeling my decision solidify with each administrative detail. "I appreciate your efficiency." After hanging up, I sat motionless in my kitchen chair, the remnants of breakfast forgotten. Across the room, Gerda's bouquet had bloomed even more overnight, its carefree beauty reminding me that there are friendships that give without expectation. Through the window, I watched a family of blue jays visit the feeder, the parents teaching their young the art of survival. The doorbell rang at 2:45 p.m. The courier, a young woman with a tablet for signatures, handed me a large envelope containing my financial emancipation. I signed where she showed me, thanked her, and closed the door like someone lowering the curtain on the final act of long maternal devotion. The rest of the day passed in mundane activities. I helped with the after-school library program, tended my garden, prepared a simple dinner. If I checked my phone more often than usual, expecting calls that didn't come, it was a weakness I kept to myself. 3 days later, the bank's notification would arrive at Anna and Lucas's house. 3 days to doubt, to hesitate, to become again the compliant mother who supported for 15 years without acknowledgement. But I didn't hesitate. Instead, I wrote a letter to each of my grandchildren, expressing my unconditional love and explaining in age-appropriate terms that adults sometimes make decisions that affect the family. I assured them that nothing that happened was their fault, nor was it theirs to fix. I mailed the letters with delivery confirmation, ensuring they would arrive after the bank notification, but before Anna could intercept them. The storm broke 5 days later. I was trimming roses when Gerda appeared on the other side of our shared fence. "Phone in hand. Brace yourself. Your daughter just dropped a bomb on Facebook." My stomach tightened, but my voice stayed steady. "What kind of bomb?" "The public kind. Drama about betrayal, abandonment. How can a mother do this to her children? That sort of thing." Gerda's expression mixed concern with a certain suppressed satisfaction. "Thought you should know before the calls start." As if her warning had summoned the moment, my phone began ringing inside the house. I removed my gardening gloves deliberately, brushed dirt from my knees, and walked inside without hurry or fear, simply prepared. "How could you do this?" Anna's voice burst through without greeting, only accusation. "We got a letter saying you've withdrawn from the mortgage and ownership. This can't be right. Fix this, Mom." The old Elizabeth would have soothed, apologized, done anything to repair what upset her daughter. The woman I'd become took a deep breath instead of yielding. "It's not a mistake, Anna. I've ended my financial support and my share as co-owner." "You've what?" she asked. "Why would you do that? How could you do this to us? If I remember correctly, your exact words on Mother's Day were that I wasn't really welcome. Not enough family to attend the celebration." My voice remained calm. I stuck to facts, not accusations. I've simply adjusted my financial involvement to match that reality. Silence on the line, followed by an incredulous snort. "This is because of the stupid brunch? Seriously, you're punishing us because we didn't invite you to one single event?" "It's not punishment, Anna. It's consequence for years of taking without acknowledgement. For exclusion that went from exception to habit. Mom, you can't do this." Her voice switched from anger to panic. "We can't pay the mortgage without your help. The bank says we're already in arrears. They're threatening foreclosure if we don't resolve the situation immediately." "I'm quite familiar with how mortgage contracts work," I replied, surprised by my own calmness. "You'll need to find new financing or consider selling the house." "Sell our house? Are you crazy? The kids, the school, our friends, everything is here. How can you be so cruel?" The question hung between us, so similar to what Gerda had told me about Carl, so revealing in its assumption that setting boundaries was an act of cruelty, not health. "I've consistently supported your family for 15 years. Anna. Without acknowledgement, without gratitude, while being increasingly excluded from your lives except when convenient. I paused, choosing my next words carefully. That arrangement is over. What happens now is up to you and Lucas. Lucas is devastated, she said, switching tactics. He had no idea. How could you hide this from him all these years? That was your decision, not mine. I never demanded it remain a secret. More silence, this time thicker. Then, with cold calculation, the kids will never forgive you for taking away their home. The threat, for that's what it was, struck precisely. But my love for Sophie and Max was too real to be weaponized against me. I've already written to them, I answered. I explained that adults sometimes make difficult decisions, and that my love for them remains unchanged, regardless of where they live. You had no right to contact them. Anna's voice rose again. This is our family matter, and we handle it. Sophie and Max are my grandchildren, Anna. That connection exists beyond your convenience. The conversation dragged on another 10 minutes. Accusations and defenses, threats and boundaries. It ended not with resolution, but with exhaustion. Anna's final words, "This isn't over," no longer carried the panic of her initial reactions, or the calculated manipulation of the conversation's middle. Just a flat determination suggesting this conflict had only just begun. I hung up the phone with steady hands. My garden was visible through the window, where I'd interrupted the rose trimming. The roses would wait. They'd survived worse neglect than a few hours' delay. The first battle was over. The war, I suspected, had just begun. 4 days passed in relative quiet, more a pause between storms than true peace. I maintained my routines, volunteering at the library, tending the garden, afternoon tea with Gerda. If I checked my phone more frequently than usual, it was concern for my grandchildren, who despite my letters remained quiet. On Friday afternoon, a text finally came from Sophie. "Got your letter? Mom and Dad fight all the time. Max asks why we have to move. Can I call you later?" My heart contracted reading the simple message. Proof that Anna's prediction was coming true. The children were caught in the middle of adult decisions, but that Sophie was reaching out on her own initiative gave me hope that our relationship could survive whatever came. "Yes, anytime. I love you both so much," I replied immediately. The 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Finally, "Love you too." Dad didn't know about the money. He's really mad at Mom. That didn't surprise me. Lucas had always struck me as more thoughtless than malicious. Happy to enjoy the lifestyle Anna cultivated without asking how it was financed. Learning that their mortgage had been subsidized by his mother-in-law for 15 years would be a hard blow to his pride and his trust in her. The doorbell rang shortly after 5 p.m., pulling me from reading a book I'd been unable to concentrate on all afternoon. Through the peephole, I saw Anna on my porch, unusually disheveled, hair pulled back severely, almost no makeup, dressed functionally rather than elegantly. I opened the door without hesitation. Whatever came next, I would face directly. "Can I come in, Mom?" she asked, voice strained with suppressed emotion. I stepped aside, gesturing to the living room where afternoon light cast long shadows on the familiar furniture, most from the old family house, modest but maintained like the woman who kept them. Anna sat on the edge of the sofa, declining my offer of tea with a curt headshake. I took my usual chair, hands folded in my lap, waiting. "The bank officially denied our refinancing application," she began without preamble. "Our credit is maxed out, and without your guarantee, we don't qualify for the loan." I nodded without surprise. "I'm sorry that's difficult for you." "Are you sorry?" she burst out. "What do you want from me?" "I want you to see me," I answered simply. "Not as a resource to be used or an obligation to be managed, but as a person with dignity and worth, independent of what I can provide you. See you?" Anna repeated tonelessly. "While you're throwing us out of our house?" "I'm not throwing anyone out, Anna. I've simply stopped preventing the natural consequences of your financial decisions." I leaned forward slightly. "You've lived above your actual means for years, and that was only possible through my help. Help you never acknowledged, appreciated, or respected. So this is punishment." "No." I shook my head. "This is a boundary. It says I deserve better than being excluded from my daughter's life, except when I'm needed financially. We stared at each other across the living room, mother and daughter, seeing each other through lenses shaped by very different interpretations of our shared history. In her eyes, I saw genuine confusion mixed with anger and fear. She truly didn't understand why her behavior had earned this response. "The kids are devastated," she said finally, clinging to what she knew would hurt me most. "Sophie cried herself to sleep last night. Max keeps asking what he did wrong, why we have to leave the only home he's ever known." The pain was sharp, but expected. "I'm truly sorry they're suffering," I said. "They bear no blame for their mother's choices. I've told them my love for them is unconditional and doesn't change, but not so unconditional that I prevent you from adjusting to your reality. They're not losing their home," I said. "Your financial reality is just changing. How you handle that with them, what story you tell, what values you convey, that's entirely up to you." She reached for her purse with deliberate movements. "We have 30 days to move out. Lucas's parents refuse to help us. They say we've been financially irresponsible. We're moving to an apartment on Route 31. I nodded, taking in the information without reacting to the implied accusation. "I hope you'll allow me to maintain my relationship with Sophie and Max during this transition." "You mean the relationship you endangered through your actions?" she asked, her smile without warmth. "We'll see, Mom. We'll see what's left after they understand what you've done." With that final manipulation attempt, she walked to the door and left the house without another word. I remained in my chair, listening to the sound of the car starting and driving away. The silence that followed was deeper for the conflict that had preceded it. Outside, the afternoon was falling, my garden bathed in the golden light of approaching sunset. The azaleas Klaus had planted continued blooming faithfully, their cycle untouched by human dramas. I had stood firm. I'd held my boundaries despite emotional manipulation. I'd refused to yield to threats or guilt. The woman I'd been a month ago would barely recognize the current one. Not harder exactly, but clearer. More defined in what I was willing to accept and what I wasn't. The phone rang. Sophie's number lit up the display. Whatever came next, at least this connection remained. "Grandma?" Sophie's voice sounded uncertain on the other end. "Are you there?" "I'm here, sweetheart," I answered, settling more comfortably in my chair as if physical comfort could penetrate the connection and reach her. "How are you?" A pause, then. "Mom says we have to move because of you. Because you stopped helping pay for the house." The direct question deserved an honest answer, carefully worded to fit a 13-year-old's understanding. "That's partly true," I admitted. "I did stop helping with the payments, but that's not the whole story." "What's the rest?" she asked, her voice full of youthful curiosity, still free from adult evasions. "It's complicated, Sophie. Your mother and I have very different ideas about what family means, what we owe each other." "Because of Mother's Day? When she didn't invite you?" A simple statement that hit the heart of the matter. "Yes, because of that, but also because of many little things that happened over the years." "Dad didn't know you were paying for the house," she said, still amazed. "He was really mad when he found out." "I can imagine," I replied, trying to stay neutral. "It's not easy to learn something so important was hidden from you." "Mom's been crying and yelling a lot." Another pause. "Max doesn't understand why we have to leave. He keeps asking if we did something wrong." My heart contracted at the thought of my 10-year-old grandson feeling responsible for adult conflicts. "You didn't do anything wrong, Sophie. Neither did Max. This is about decisions we adults make, not you. But if you helped again, we could stay, right?" she asked, the hopeful logic of youth seeking simple solutions to complex problems. "It's not that simple," I said gently. "Sometimes relationships need to change deeply before they can heal and become healthier." "That's what our school counselor says about Lena's parents getting divorced," Sophie noted, connecting ideas with the clarity of bright teenagers, that it's not just about fixing one problem. "Your counselor sounds very wise," I smiled despite the weight of the conversation. "And so do you, Sophie." "I don't feel wise," she admitted. "I'm scared and angry and sad, sometimes all at once." "That's completely normal," I assured her. "Big changes always hurt, even when they're necessary." "Will I still see you when we move?" The question came in a quieter voice, suddenly sounding much younger than her 13 years. "Of course you will," I promised immediately. "My love for you and Max doesn't depend on where you live. It never has and never will." Our conversation continued another 15 minutes. Sophie told me details about the apartment they'd be moving to, her fears about changing schools, her relief that at least her cat could come. Throughout the call, I listened attentively, offered comfort without undermining her parents' authority, and answered her questions honestly without burdening her with adult complexities. When we said goodbye, I sat in the increasing dusk, phone still warm in my hands. Through the window, I saw the light in Gerda's kitchen across the fence, a beacon of friendship in a sometimes difficult sea of emotions. The following days brought a strange new rhythm to my life. Sophie's calls became a nightly habit, often with a few minutes from Max, whose biggest concern seemed to be whether I'd still bake his birthday cake in September, as I had every year since his birth. I promised I would, regardless of the address. Lucas called once, a strained, forced conversation in which he apologized as much for years of ignorance about the financial arrangement as he subtly suggested I might reconsider for the children's sake. When I politely but firmly held my position, he didn't call again. Anna remained completely silent, though through Gerda's constant monitoring, I occasionally saw her Facebook posts. The narrative she was building on social media showed a family bravely facing circumstances beyond their control, never mentioning my role in those circumstances. Her Mother's Day post celebrating true family still stood unedited, a digital testament to the exclusion that had triggered all this change. 2 weeks after Anna's visit, a moving truck pulled up in front of their stately house in Lindenberg. Gerda, passing by on her way to the supermarket, reported it to me with her usual frankness. "End of an era," she commented, setting a plate of lemon cookies on my kitchen table, her excuse for bringing the news. They were loading furniture when I passed. "Fancy stuff. Let's see how much fits in the apartment." "Enough," I said, pouring us both tea. "The important things will fit." Gerda watched me over the rim of her cup. "You look pretty good through all this." "Better than I expected." "Really?" I considered, surprised that it was mostly true. The initial shock and pain of Anna's rejection had given way to a curious calm. Not exactly happiness, but a sense of rightness, of alignment between my inner worth and my outer actions. "You haven't wavered once." Gerda nodded approvingly. "No tearful call in the middle of the night to reactivate the mortgage. No contrite daughter showing up with genuine regret. It's developing as it should." "The children are having a hard time," I admitted, the only shadow in my newfound clarity, especially Sophie. "She's smart enough to understand more than she's being told." "Children are resilient," Gerda reminded me, "and they're learning an important lesson about consequences, about treating people with respect instead of just using them." "I hope so," I sighed. "I worry about the story Anna's telling them, that I'm cruel or vindictive, rather than someone who simply demands mutual respect. The truth always comes to light," Gerda said with the wisdom of her 76 years. "Sophie already sees more than Anna thinks. That's why she keeps calling you, despite her mother's attitude." The doorbell interrupted our conversation. Through the kitchen window, I saw a delivery van parked at the curb. "Are you expecting something?" Gerda asked. "No," I replied, standing to answer the door. The courier held a large, flat package and a tablet for signing. "Elizabeth Weber? Please sign here." Inside, I unwrapped layers of protective material until I found a framed picture, clearly painted by Max. His style was unmistakable. It showed a simple house with 4 stick figures outside. A tall girl, Sophie, a smaller boy, himself, a woman with gray hair, me, and a cat. Above the picture, in the careful handwriting of a 10-year-old, "Family is the people who love you, no matter what." In the corner of the frame, a note in Sophie's script. "Grandma, Max made this for you. Mom doesn't know we're sending it. We know you still love us even though everything's weird now. The apartment isn't as bad as we thought. My room has a cool window seat, and Max's room has shelves for his Legos. Dad seems happier, even though it's smaller. Mom's still really mad, but yesterday I heard her tell a friend maybe they've been living beyond their means. I miss you. Can we come visit you soon? Love, Sophie and Max. Tears came to my eyes as I handed the note to Gerda, who read it with an approving nod. See? She said simply. The truth shows itself. I found a place for Max's picture on the living room wall next to the family photos and the few pieces of art I'd collected over the years. Its childlike simplicity contrasted with the more formal portraits around it, but fit perfectly, an honest expression amid carefully staged poses. That evening, I called Jürgen Schneider with a request. I'd like to set up education trust funds for my grandchildren, I explained. Something they can access at 18, independent of family circumstances. A very wise measure, he agreed. I'll prepare the necessary documents. Using money from the property sale? Partially, I confirmed. The house isn't sold yet, but the realtors say there's significant interest. Apparently it's now at a more realistic price without Anna and Lucas's inflated expectations. As the call ended, I sat on my small back porch, watching fireflies appear in the dusk. From the garden rose the scent of evening primrose, subtle, sweet, present only in the evening. A message beeped on my phone. Sophie again, got your call. Can we come this weekend? Mom says it's okay if Dad brings us. Progress, however small. A door left ajar where before there were only walls. 6 weeks after Mother's Day, the day Anna said I wasn't welcome, not enough family to be invited, life had reorganized itself in ways I never expected. My daughter and her family now lived in an apartment matching their financial reality. My relationship with my grandchildren endured, perhaps even deepened through honest conversations. My finances, unburdened from supporting a second household, opened new possibilities, including secured educational futures for Sophie and Max. And I found myself changed in subtle but fundamental ways. The cautious compliance that had characterized my relationships for decades was replaced by something healthier. Love that still gave, but with boundaries. Support that was offered, but with expectations of respect. Gerda had been right. Sometimes people need to lose something to recognize its value. Whether Anna would ever reach that understanding was uncertain, but I'd found something I didn't know I was missing. A sense of self-worth that didn't need external validation. A value that existed beyond my usefulness to others. On my counter, a new blackberry cake cooled. Max's favorite. Tomorrow, he and Sophie would come, brought by their father in an act of quiet rebellion against Anna's lingering resentment. We'd eat cake on the back porch, tend the garden together, perhaps play the board games they'd always loved during visits. These simple things, the connection, the affection given and received without conditions, the honesty between generations, suddenly seemed precious. Not because they replaced what was lost, but because they revealed what had always been most important. Peace, I discovered, tasted like afternoon tea on my back porch. Like courage spoken quietly but firmly. Like respected boundaries and reclaimed dignity. It had the unexpected taste of freedom. The tea steeped, chamomile with a hint of homemade honey, while memories surfaced unbidden. Not from Anna's call today, but from another conversation 15 years ago that had set all this in motion. "It's perfect, Mom," Anna called out, her voice trembling with excitement as she led me through the empty interior of the colonial house in Lindenberg. 4 bedrooms, a proper dining room, this gorgeous kitchen, and the schools are the best in the area. I smiled, genuinely happy to see her so enthusiastic. At 32, my daughter had already developed such controlled reserve that she sometimes seemed older than me. "It's beautiful, sweetheart. Can you and Lucas afford the payments?" Her expression clouded slightly, the first shadow over her excitement. "That's the thing. With the down payment they're requiring, it would be tight. Lucas thinks we should look for something smaller in a different neighborhood." "And what do you think?" I asked, though I already knew as I watched her fingers lovingly trace the crown molding. "I think this is where we belong," she said with determination. "This is where my children should grow up." We stood silently in the middle of empty rooms waiting to be filled with a future. Klaus had been dead for 6 years. The family house, too large for me alone, had been sold, and I had a comfortable, if not lavish, retirement fund. I'd already helped Anna through university and her master's degree, always careful not to make her dependent, but never letting her go without. "What if I help?" I suggested carefully. "I could contribute something for the down payment, maybe co-sign as guarantor. The transformation in her face was immediate. Hope and calculation replaced disappointment. Could you really? What about your retirement? I've always been careful with money, I assured her. The house sale left enough, and I've moved into that small place on Rose Street. Then she hugged me, a rare gesture from my increasingly reserved daughter. You're the best, Mom. We'll pay you back one day, I promise. But I never wanted them to pay me back, only to belong, to maintain the familial bond that grew thinner as Anna formed her new identity as Miller, not Weber. The following week, we sat in Jürgen Schneider's wood-paneled office, going through documents with terms I only half understood but trusted him to explain fairly. My name went next to Anna and Lucas's on the deed. A precaution, Jürgen explained, given the size of my contribution. And the monthly transfers? He asked, looking between us. How do you want to structure those? Anna visibly frowned in confusion. What monthly transfers? I spoke quickly, perhaps too quickly. I'd like to help with the payments, just until you're better established. We can set up an automatic transfer from my account. It doesn't have to be the entire amount, just a supplement. That's too much, she said, but her objection was weak. In her eyes, I already saw the calculation of what this meant for their household, their lifestyle. I insist, I said. Consider it an investment in my grandchildren's future. Jürgen watched this exchange with the neutral expression of a man who'd seen such arrangements often. But when Anna briefly stepped out to take a call, he leaned toward me with unusual openness. Elizabeth, I recommend including a contingency clause, something that protects your interests if circumstances change. That's not necessary, I assured him. It's family. Still, he persisted, it's my job to foresee such situations. If you ever need to end the arrangement, this clause guarantees you can do so without complications. I signed where he showed me, barely listening to the explanation of legal terms and safeguards. Why would I ever withdraw support from my only daughter, my grandchildren? And yet, 15 years later, I'd done exactly that. The tea had gone cold in my cup. The memories consumed minutes without my noticing. Outside, it was completely dark, my garden visible only as denser shadows against the night. On the other side of the fence, I saw the warm light from Gerda's kitchen, inviting and cozy. Her invitation for tea, neither accepted nor declined, still stood. I rinsed the untouched cup and took my cardigan from the hook. The spring breeze brought a slight chill, not unpleasant, but noticeable to bones that had become less tolerant of extremes with the years. The short walk to Gerda's house would do me good. She opened the door before I could knock, as if she'd been waiting for me. About time, she said with her Berlin accent that she hadn't lost after 40 years in Freiburg. I've got brownies going stale. Sorry, I said, stepping into the familiar warmth of her kitchen. I was busy with paperwork. Gerda snorted, setting a steaming cup of tea and a brownie I hadn't requested, but wouldn't refuse in front of me. Paperwork, my foot? You were sitting there brooding over Anna's latest stunt. I smiled despite everything. You know me too well. Know you? I am you, just with less filter and better desserts. Gerda sat across from me, her lively eyes seeking my gaze. So she uninvited you from Mother's Day. What are you going to do? I've already acted, I admitted. I canceled the automatic mortgage transfer and called Jürgen Schneider about the co-ownership. Gerda's eyebrows shot up, disappearing under her silver bangs. Well, look at that. Elizabeth Weber finally showing backbone. Only took 3 decades. That's not fair, I protested without resentment. I've always tried to respect Anna's independence, to help without controlling. And has that helped you? Gerda asked without sharpness. She takes your money, your time with the grandkids when it suits her, your hands for her prize-winning roses, and then leaves you out on Mother's Day, as if you were a disposable accessory. Said so directly, the pattern was undeniable. Each year my presence shrank, but my contributions remained the same. Invisible support, invisible presence, eventually invisible altogether. I keep thinking about Klaus, I said quietly. What he'd make of all this. Gerda's expression softened. That man worshipped you, Lisa. He'd be furious at how your daughter treats you. He always said you were too indulgent with Anna, that you tried too hard to smooth her path. I took a sip of tea, finding unexpected comfort in its warmth. The last coherent thing he said to me in the hospital was to make me promise I'd take care of her. But he also said, "Don't let her walk all over you." Wise man, Gerda nodded approvingly. And what happens Monday when this Jürgen calls back? I set the cup down. The plan formed as I spoke it aloud. I'll ask him to draw up the necessary documents to remove my name from the deed and release me from the mortgage. Either they refinance without me or they face the consequences. Foreclosure, eventually, Gerda said. That word sounds harsh and cutting in my mouth. They won't be able to cover the payments without my share. Lucas's real estate business has been struggling since the market downturn, and Anna's interior design is more hobby than profession. Gerda whistled softly. This will cause a storm, Lisa. I know, and I did. I could already imagine the accusations, the tears, the manipulation attempts that would surely follow, but I keep thinking about what Anna said today, that I wasn't really welcome. Not enough family for Mother's Day. Then you're also not enough family to pay their mortgage, Gerda concluded decisively. Sounds completely logical to me. We sat in companionable silence, the weight of my decision settling between us. It wasn't regret. That train had left with Anna's casual dismissal. It was more the awareness of the approaching storm, the inevitable confrontation that would follow. And the grandchildren? Gerda finally asked, voicing what troubled me most. Sophie and Max bear no blame for their mother's decisions. No, I agreed. They don't, and I'll make sure they know that. But perhaps it's time they learn that actions have consequences, that relationships require reciprocity. A hard lesson, Gerda mused, but necessary. I drank my tea and ate my brownie, both made sweeter by the genuine friendship that accompanied them. When I stood to leave, Gerda walked me to the door and briefly squeezed my hand, an unusual gesture for a woman as sparing with physical affection as she was generous with direct honesty. For what it's worth, she said, I think you're doing the right thing. Late, but finally right. Thank you, I replied, grateful for validation I didn't know I needed. For everything. Oh, go on. She shooed me away, uncomfortable with tenderness. Call me tomorrow. I want to know how you spend your first free Mother's Day in 15 years. On the walk back to my house, I felt a strange mixture of sadness and determination. The path was familiar, just a few yards between neighboring houses, but the woman taking these steps was different from the one who'd stood paralyzed in her kitchen hours earlier. The same aged body, the same careful gait, but something fundamental had shifted inside, a reclamation of courage that had been postponed too long in the name of maternal love. Inside, I prepared for bed with my usual rituals: wash face, brush teeth, read a chapter in the novel on my nightstand to calm the mind. From the nightstand, a family photo watched me, Anna and Lucas with the children at Christmas a few years ago, all smiling in coordinated outfits in front of a professionally decorated backdrop. I'd been there that day, though my presence appeared in none of the photos that landed in frames or on social media. Tomorrow would be Mother's Day. I'd spend it for the first time in decades without a word from my daughter. But perhaps, I thought as sleep overtook me, it would also be the first day of a new phase between us, one based on truth, not silent sacrifice, on mutual respect, not one-sided devotion. That thought accompanied me into dreams, neither comforting nor tormenting, simply there. A reality as undeniable as the documents in my desk drawer, as undeniable as the words Anna had spoken so easily. This year you're not really welcome. Perhaps I never really was. Mother's Day broke with almost theatrical perfection. The sun stole through the bedroom windows, birds sang their spring symphony in the backyard oak, and the scent of spring flowers drifted through the cracked window. A picture-perfect morning for a day I'd spend alone. I stayed in bed longer than usual. The absence of plans created a strange emptiness in my normally structured day. No arrival at Anna's at 11 a.m. No careful transport of a still warm cake to the car. No composing myself to put on a neutral, friendly face when Lucas's mother made her subtle comments about my comfortable shoes or plain jewelry. When I finally got up, I maintained my morning routine with care. Even if it was a small gesture, it was an act of respect toward myself. My best lavender blouse, bought in a rare moment of extravagance last year, and pressed slacks replaced casual Sunday wear. If I was spending this Mother's Day alone, I'd do it with dignity. After breakfast, I took my coffee to the front porch, settling into the white wicker chair I'd brought from the family house to this smaller home. The neighborhood was quiet. Most families at church are already gathered for celebrations. Across the street, the Schmidts were loading gift-wrapped packages into their car, presumably on their way to their daughter in Konstanz. My phone remained silent on the small table beside me. Sophie or Max would call. They were old enough, 13 and 10, to have their own phones, their own ability to reach out without their mother's mediation. Last year they'd given me handmade cards and shy hugs before Anna redirected their attention to Lucas's mother and her store-bought gifts. The memory brought an unexpected pang, not for my exclusion this year, but for what the children were learning through their mother's example. That there are disposable people, that love can be conditional, that generosity need neither be acknowledged nor reciprocated. A soft notification sound came from my phone. Not a call, but a Facebook alert, an app Sophie had installed for me so "You can see our photos, Grandma," during her last visit. I rarely looked at it. It felt loud and artificial in its forced intimacy. But today, something compelled me to check. Anna's post appeared at the top of what Sophie called my wall, a professional-looking photo of her family gathered around an elegant brunch table. Apparently on a country club terrace. Lucas's parents flanked the group, his mother resplendent in a designer outfit I recognized from the many times she'd mentioned its price. Anna and Lucas posed with practiced smiles. Sophie and Max looked uncomfortable, but obedient in formal clothing I'd never seen before. The caption read, "Celebrating Mother's Day with our true family. So grateful for those who are always meaningfully present. Blessed, grateful family, Mother's Day, true family." The phrase hit me like a hammer blow. A deliberate exclusion, impossible to misunderstand. It wasn't just absence, it was erasure, not forgetting, but conscious rejection. I set the phone on the table, my hands suddenly unsteady. There was theatricality in Anna's post, a message made for me, or perhaps for herself. A line drawn. "Looks like a stiff event," Gerda said from the street. She wore her gardening clothes, a pair of pruning shears in one hand, a small colorful bouquet in the other. Those poor kids look like prisoners in Sunday clothes. Despite everything, I smiled. "Good morning to you too, Gerda." "I brought you this," she said, climbing the porch steps with the mobility of someone years younger. "My garden's bursting today. Thought you should enjoy it." She handed me the bouquet, nothing formal or ordered, just an enthusiastic collection of whatever had caught her attention. Daisies, late tulips, fragrant lilac clusters, and even a few colorful weeds that gave the whole thing a wild charm. "They're beautiful," I said, genuinely moved. "Thank you. Well, it's Mother's Day, isn't it? And you're the best mother I know, even if your daughter's too blind to see it." She settled into the chair beside mine without asking. "So how are you?" "I'm okay," I said automatically, an answer used so often it had no edges left. Gerda snorted. "Sure, and I'm the Empress of Germany." The laugh that escaped me was the first genuine sound I'd made in days. "All right, I'm not okay but determined." "That sounds better," she nodded approvingly. "News from the lawyer?" "It's Sunday," I reminded her. "He'll call tomorrow." And then, I considered the question, watching a robin peck on my lawn, searching for breakfast. Then I do what I said. I completely end the financial support. Let them face reality. "They won't take that well," Gerda observed. "No," I agreed. "They won't." We sat in quiet silence as the morning warmed around us. On the other side of the fence, I saw my garden waiting for care. The roses needed pruning. The vegetable beds were ready for this year's tomato plants, tasks that had carried me through widowhood, retirement, and the growing distance from my only daughter. "Have I ever told you about my son, Carl?" Gerda asked suddenly. Surprised, I looked at her. In 15 years of friendship, she'd barely mentioned her children more than in passing. "I don't think so." "He was like your Anna. Always wanted more. Was always a bit embarrassed by his mother's accent, her small apartment, her immigrant manners." She looked at the street as if seeing something beyond the present. "He married a girl from Hamburg. Old money. though not as much as they pretended. I wasn't invited to the wedding. "Oh, Gerda," I whispered, taking her hand. "Ancient history," she shrugged, though the old pain lay in her voice. "The thing is, I spent years trying to buy his affection. Sent checks, gifts for grandchildren I barely knew, thought if I gave enough he'd eventually see me. And did he?" I asked without hesitation. One day I saw myself clearly, an old woman emptying her savings account for people who couldn't even remember her birthday. And I stopped, just like that. Just like that, she confirmed. I wrote one last check to myself and booked a 2-week trip to Italy with it. Best decision of my life. I tried to imagine doing something so bold, so decidedly for myself. It was difficult after decades of subordinating my needs to others. And what became of Carl afterward? He was furious, of course. Called me selfish, ungrateful, as if I owed him something, not the other way around. Gerda's mouth twisted into a sardonic smile. But 3 years later, his marriage fell apart, and guess who he called when he needed a place to stay? Did you take him in? Yes, but on my terms, not his, with clear expectations and firm boundaries. She patted my hand before releasing it. Now he lives in Ulm, calls every Sunday, really brings the grandkids to visit. Not just for photos. Sometimes people need to lose something to recognize its value. Her story settled over me like a blanket, a warning, but also hope. No guarantee my situation would end the same way, but a reminder that change, even when it initially hurts, can lead to healthier relationships. My phone rang again, another Facebook notification. Against my better judgment, I opened it. Sophie had commented on Anna's post. "I miss Grandma today. Why didn't she come?" The comment was deleted, but the notification had captured it. My heart contracted for my granddaughter, for her confusion, for the lies she'd presumably gotten as an answer to an innocent question. "That's enough," I said, standing abruptly. "I need to make some calls." Gerda looked at me with raised eyebrows. "Going into battle, Elizabeth?" "No," I answered, taking my phone and the bouquet she'd brought. "I'm setting things in motion. That's something different." Inside, I moved with new determination. First, a text to Sophie's phone. "Thinking of you, sweetheart. I love you always." Simple, sincere, without mentioning my absence or Anna's exclusion. Then I called the senior center where I helped on Tuesday afternoons. "Sarah, this is Elizabeth Weber. Would it work if I brought a homemade cake for lunch today? I have one left over." Then I sat at my desk and wrote a more detailed email to Jürgen Schneider than the message I'd left. I laid out clearly what I wanted: complete release from mortgage obligation, transfer of my ownership share to Anna and Lucas, and legal documents confirming the end of any financial support. The call tomorrow would formalize these steps, but I wanted my intentions in writing, immutable against emotional appeals that might come. When I clicked send, a strange calm came over me. Not the resignation of yesterday, nor the initial shock of exclusion. It was something else. A certainty that sprouted from the fertile soil of long-postponed self-respect. Outside, the bells of St. Martin's rang down the street. Families emerged from Mass, on their way to lunches and Mother's Day celebrations throughout the town. At the country club, Anna would receive compliments for her beautiful family, her perfect children, her successful husband. The narrative Anna had so carefully constructed would remain intact today, but tomorrow would bring a different story. One where actions had consequences, where relationships required reciprocity, where a mother's love remained unconditional, but her financial support did not. I took the bouquet Gerda had brought me and breathed in its honest, unaffected scent. Then I placed the flowers in the crystal vase that had belonged to my grandmother, the one Anna had once borrowed for a dinner party and never returned. I positioned them on the kitchen table, a small celebration of my own worth. Mother's Day proceeded sunny and perfect outside my windows. The day would pass, as all days pass, but I would emerge from it changed. No longer just a woman waiting for crumbs of recognition, but one who reclaimed her power, her dignity, and yes, her money too. The thought brought not exactly happiness, but a sense of justice that had been missing from me too long. The weeks passed and my life found a new, quieter rhythm. Sophie and Max's visits became more regular, often accompanied by Lucas, who maintained a polite if distant demeanor. His anger at Anna for hiding the truth about the mortgage payment seemed to be subsiding, replaced by pragmatic acceptance of their new circumstances. Anna herself remained at a distance. Her communication was limited to terse text messages about the logistics of the children's visits. Her Facebook posts, which Gerda continued to show me with a mixture of amusement and outrage, still painted the picture of a heroic family overcoming adversity, never once acknowledging my role in their story. One afternoon, about 3 months after Mother's Day, I sat with Gerda on my porch, a pot of freshly brewed tea between us. Fall had begun, the air was cool, and the leaves on the backyard oak were turning golden. "Have you heard anything from Anna?" Gerda asked, dunking a lemon cookie in her tea. "Not directly," I replied. "Sophie says she's still angry, but Lucas mentioned she's started working part-time at a furniture store. Maybe a sign she's taking responsibility," Gerda snorted. "Or she wants to keep financing her design fantasies. But hey, at least she's contributing something." I smiled, accustomed to Gerda's unvarnished assessments. "I hope it's a step forward. For the children, if not for me." "The children are fine," Gerda said with conviction. "Sophie told me last week about how she decorated her new room, and Max showed me his Lego fortress when they were here. They're adapting better than their mother." She was right. Sophie had sent me photos of her window seat, now decorated with pillows and a small lamp, and Max had proudly presented a tower of Lego bricks almost as tall as himself. Their resilience was a comfort, proof that love and stability don't depend on a particular address. The house in Lindenberg was eventually sold at a price that covered the mortgage but left little for Anna and Lucas. Jürgen Schneider had handled the legal details efficiently, and part of the proceeds flowed into trust funds for Sophie and Max, as I'd planned. The rest of my share remained in my account, an unfamiliar reserve that opened possibilities I hadn't considered in decades. I began thinking about small trips, perhaps to Tuscany, inspired by Gerda's stories about her Italian journey. Or maybe I'd expand my garden, build a greenhouse, something that belonged entirely to me. One evening, shortly before Christmas, my phone rang as I was putting the finishing touches on an Advent wreath. Sophie's name lit up the display and I answered with a smile. "Grandma, can you come Saturday?" she asked without preamble, her voice excited. "We're having a Christmas tree decorating day, and Max says it's not the same without your cake." "I wouldn't want to be anywhere else," I replied, my heart warm with joy. "Tell Max I'll bring the blackberry cake. And maybe the gingerbread cookies you made last year," she added hopefully. "Deal," I laughed. When I arrived at their new apartment on Saturday, a modest but cozy place on Route 31, Sophie and Max greeted me with hugs that were tighter than ever before. Lucas was polite, offered coffee, then made an excuse about errands, a quiet gesture giving me space with the children. Anna was there, her greeting stiff but not hostile. "Nice of you to come, Mom," she said, her voice strained neutral. The kids insisted. "I'm glad to be here," I replied, holding her gaze, searching for a spark of the connection that once united us. She nodded, turned away to pull garland from a box, and I let it rest there. The afternoon passed with laughter, the scent of pine, and the chaos of tree decorating. Max hung his homemade ornaments with pride, while Sophie untangled a string of lights and told stories from school. When we later sat down with cake and hot chocolate, the apartment felt warm, full of life, despite its smaller size and simpler furnishings. Anna sat on the edge, participating but holding back. Her eyes occasionally wandered to me, as if trying to understand something that eluded her. At goodbye, Sophie hugged me tightly. "Thank you, Grandma. It was the best day in a long time." Max wrapped his arms around my waist and murmured, "Next time we'll do your puzzle again, okay?" "Okay, promised," I said, stroking his head. Anna walked me to the door, her hands in the pockets of her cardigan. "They really love you," she said quietly, almost reluctantly. "I know," I replied simply. "And I love them. And you, Anna, even when we don't see eye to eye," she nodded, her lips a thin line, and I left without expecting more. On the drive home, the streetlights casting soft light on the first snow, I felt a mixture of contentment and quiet pain. Anna and I were far from healing our relationship, but the door wasn't completely closed. The children were the bridge connecting us, their love a constant that neither anger nor distance could break. At home, I placed the Advent wreath on the kitchen table, lit the first candle, and sat down with a cup of tea. Through the window, I saw Gerda's house, the light in her kitchen a familiar anchor. The next morning, I called Jürgen to finalize the trust fund details. "You've thought this through well, Elizabeth," he said, a trace of admiration in his voice. "The children will thank you one day." "I hope so," I replied. "But for now, it's enough to know they have a future, regardless of what happens between me and their mother." The months passed, and the new year brought a quiet but steady change. Anna began making small gestures of approach, a call to ask about my garden, an invitation to Sophie's school performance. They weren't grand reconciliations, no tearful apologies, but they were enough to see hope. Gerda, always my confidant, commented dryly, "She's slowly coming to her senses. Give her time, Lisa, but don't let her walk all over you again." "No worries," I laughed. "That chapter's closed." In spring, almost a year after that fateful Mother's Day, I stood in my garden cutting the first roses of the year. Sophie and Max were here for the weekend, their voices echoing from the yard where they used an old rope as a swing. Anna had promised to come by later to pick them up, and I wondered if she'd stay this time, for tea, a conversation, a small step back toward each other. As the sun set, I carried the roses inside, arranging them in my grandmother's crystal vase. The scent filled the kitchen, a promise of spring, of new beginnings. I was no longer the woman who gave herself away in sacrifice, who waited for recognition, who sacrificed her dignity for others' convenience. I was Elizabeth Weber, mother, grandmother, friend, a woman who'd learned to recognize and defend her worth. The scars of recent months were there, but they were part of a story of strength, not defeat. And as I called the children in to cut the cake, I knew that these moments, the simple, honest, love-born ones, were the true family I'd always sought. If you liked my story, you can encourage me to write more by sending a donation. Thank you endlessly. The weeks that followed Christmas brought a gradual thaw in the frozen landscape between Anna and me. It wasn't dramatic, no tearful reconciliation or heartfelt apology, but rather a slow, cautious warming, like ice melting at winter's end. Anna's text messages became slightly less terse. Where before they'd been purely transactional, kids ready at 3 p.m., they now occasionally included small details. Sophie has a project due Monday. Might need quiet time, or Max is excited to show you his science fair volcano. I responded in kind, careful not to push too hard, not to demand more than she was ready to give. Years of library work had taught me patience, the value of letting things unfold at their own pace. One Saturday in late January, Lucas dropped the children off and for the first time, accepted my invitation to come in for coffee. We sat at my kitchen table, the same table where I'd made the decision to cancel the mortgage payments, and talked about mundane things. The weather, Max's improving grades, Sophie's interest in joining the school debate team. "Elizabeth," he said finally, setting down his cup with deliberate care, "I owe you an apology. For years, I benefited from your generosity without even knowing it existed. Anna should have told me. I should have asked more questions." "You're not responsible for what you didn't know," I replied gently, "but I appreciate you saying so." He nodded, his expression troubled. "The apartment is smaller, sure, but honestly, there's less pressure. I don't wake up every morning wondering how we'll cover the bills. And Anna, she's different. Working seems to have given her something. I'm glad," I said, and meant it. After he left, I sat at the window watching Sophie and Max build a snowman in my backyard. Their laughter drifted through the glass, pure and uncomplicated. Whatever pain this year had brought, it hadn't touched the core of what mattered most. By February, the house in Lindenberg had officially sold. Jürgen called with the final numbers, the mortgage satisfied, my investment returned, and the trust funds for Sophie and Max fully funded. After 15 years of monthly payments, my Financial entanglement with Anna's life was finally completely severed. "What will you do with the money?" Gerda asked when I told her. We were in my kitchen, as we so often were, sharing coffee and her latest batch of baked goods. "I've been thinking about that trip to Italy you mentioned," I said. "Maybe in April, when the weather's nice." "Now you're talking." Gerda's eyes lit up. "I'll give you the name of that little pensione in Florence. The owner still remembers me, I bet. And I want to build a greenhouse," I continued. "Nothing elaborate, but something where I can start seedlings early, maybe grow some herbs year-round." Gerda raised her cup in a toast. To Elizabeth Weber, finally living for herself. I clinked my cup against hers, feeling something I hadn't felt in years. Not just contentment, but genuine excitement about my own future. Not a future defined by someone else's needs or demands, but one shaped by my own desires and dreams. The education trust funds were perhaps my greatest source of satisfaction. Jürgen had structured them so that Sophie and Max would receive access at 18, enough for college tuition, vocational training, or whatever path they chose. Anna couldn't touch the money, couldn't redirect it, couldn't use it as leverage. "You're giving them freedom," Jürgen had said when we finalized the documents. Not just financial freedom, but the freedom to make choices independent of their parents' circumstances. I thought about my own limited choices at 18, how I'd worked my way through library school while living in a cramped apartment, eating ramen and day-old bread. How different might my life have been with a financial cushion, with options. Sophie and Max would have those options. No matter what happened between Anna and me, no matter what financial decisions their parents made, they'd have a foundation to build on. When I told Sophie about the trust fund during one of our phone calls, her voice became small and wondering. "But Grandma, that's your money. You should use it for yourself." "I am using it for myself," I replied. "By investing in your future. That brings me more joy than almost anything else I could do with it." There was a pause, then a sniffling sound. "I love you, Grandma. I love you too, sweetheart. Always." March brought the first real signs of spring. Crocuses pushing through. The last patches of snow, longer days, a warmth in the air that hinted at renewal. Anna called me directly for the first time in months. "Mom?" Her voice was uncertain, stripped of the anger that had colored our previous conversations. "Would you like to come to dinner next Friday? Nothing fancy, just the four of us. I'm making pot roast." My mother's pot roast had been Anna's favorite as a child. That she was making it now felt significant, though I didn't want to read too much into it. "I'd like that," I said carefully. "What time?" 6. And Mom? She hesitated. "Thank you. For the trust funds. For Sophie and Max. Lucas told me what you did." "They're my grandchildren," I replied. "I want them to have choices." "I know," she said quietly. "I'm beginning to understand a lot of things I didn't before." The call ended, shortly after, but I sat holding the phone for several minutes, processing what felt like the first genuine crack in the wall between us. Not forgiveness yet. That would take time, if it came at all. But acknowledgement. Recognition that perhaps her view of our relationship had been incomplete. The dinner the following Friday was awkward at first. Anna was clearly nervous, fussing. Over the table settings, the food, whether I wanted water or iced tea. Lucas helped by keeping conversation flowing, asking about my greenhouse plans, telling a funny story about Max's science teacher. Sophie and Max, sensing the tension, were unusually quiet until Max finally burst out with, "Grandma, did you know Mom's been taking business classes at the community college? She wants to start her own design company." Anna shot him a look, but I smiled. "That sounds wonderful, Anna. You always had an eye for design." "It's just something I'm exploring," she said, color rising in her cheeks. The furniture store job made me realize I might actually be good at this if I approach it professionally instead of as a hobby. You were always good at it, I said gently. You just needed the right circumstances to pursue it seriously. The pot roast was delicious, rich and tender the way I remembered making it when Anna was young. As we ate, the conversation gradually became easier, more natural. By dessert, a store-bought pie, which Anna apologized for 3 times, we were almost comfortable. As I prepared to leave, Anna walked me to my car. The spring evening was cool, stars beginning to appear in the darkening sky. "Mom," she said, her voice catching slightly, "I'm not ready to. We still have things to work through. But I want to try. If you do." I turned to face her. This daughter I'd raised alone. This woman who'd hurt me so deeply yet, whom I'd never stopped loving. "I want to try too," I said. "But Anna, it has to be different. I need you to see me as more than a resource, as a person who deserves respect and consideration." "I know," she whispered. "I'm starting to understand that. It's hard to admit I took you for granted for so long." "Admitting it is a start," I replied. "The rest we can work on together." She nodded, and for a moment, I thought she might hug me. Instead, she just said, "Drive safe, Mom," and stepped back. It wasn't the reconciliation I might have dreamed of months ago, but it was real. It was honest, and it was more than I'd had in years. By April, I was on a plane to Florence, a printed itinerary from Gerda in my purse, and a heart lighter than it had been in decades. I spent 2 weeks wandering cobblestone streets, standing in awe before Renaissance art, eating pasta and drinking wine at sidewalk cafes. I sent postcards to Sophie and Max, and yes, one to Anna too. Simple messages. "The Duomo is breathtaking and tried real gelato today. Nothing will ever compare." When I returned home, tanned and refreshed, my garden had exploded into spring bloom. Gerda had watered in my absence, and she greeted me at the fence with her characteristic bluntness. "Italy agreed with you," she observed. "You look 10 years younger." "I feel it," I admitted. I'd forgotten what it's like to do something purely for myself. "Well, don't forget again," she ordered. "You've got a lot of living left to do, Elizabeth Weber." The greenhouse went up in May, a modest structure at the back of my garden, but mine. I spent happy hours there, starting tomato seedlings, nursing herbs, experimenting with flowers. It became my sanctuary, a place of quiet growth and patient tending. Sophie and Max helped me plant the first seeds, their hands muddy and their faces bright with concentration. Even Anna stopped by once, ostensibly to pick up the kids but lingering to admire the structure. "It's nice, Mom," she said, running her hand along the wooden frame. "Really nice." "Thank you," I replied. "It's been a good project." We stood together in companionable silence, watching the children through the greenhouse glass. It wasn't forgiveness, yet maybe not ever in the complete sense, but it was progress. It was a beginning. Summer brought long, lazy evenings on my porch, often with Gerda, sometimes with the grandchildren, occasionally even with Anna and Lucas. We'd sit with lemonade or iced tea, talking about nothing important, letting the fireflies emerge as darkness fell. One evening, as Sophie helped me deadhead roses, she said, "You know, Grandma, I think this year has been really hard, but also kind of good. Does that make sense?" "It makes perfect sense," I replied. Sometimes the hardest things teach us the most important lessons. Like what? Like the difference between being nice and being respected. Like understanding that love doesn't mean accepting poor treatment. Like knowing your worth even when others don't see it. She considered this, her young face serious. "Is that what you learned?" "Among other things," I said, putting my arm around her shoulders. "And maybe your parents learned some things too. About consequences, about taking responsibility, about not taking people for granted. Mom says she's sorry she hurt you, Sophie said quietly. She told me and Max that she didn't appreciate you the way she should have. My throat tightened. I'm glad she's thinking about these things. Are you still mad at her? No, I said, and realized it was true. I'm not mad. I'm just different now. Stronger in some ways. And our relationship has to be different too, built on something more solid than it was before. Sophie leaned against me, and we stood together among the roses, grandmother and granddaughter, connected by something deeper than the complicated dynamics that had brought us to this moment. By the time fall arrived again, a full year since that first autumn after Mother's Day, my life had taken a shape I could never have imagined. I had my routines: library volunteering, garden work, regular visits with Sophie and Max. I had my friendships: Gerda, who'd stood by me throughout; new connections at the community center, where I'd started taking a watercolor class. I had my independence, financial and emotional. I had my dignity, hard-won and carefully guarded. I had my peace, and I had a relationship with my daughter that, while still fragile, was built on truth rather than transaction. Anna and I would never have the uncomplicated closeness I'd once dreamed of, but what we had now was more honest, more sustainable. One October evening, as I sat on my porch watching the leaves fall, my phone rang. Anna, Mom? I just wanted to call and say, well, I've been thinking about last Mother's Day, about how I treated you. And I wanted to tell you I'm sorry, really sorry. Not because of the money, but because I didn't see you. I didn't value you, and I'm working on being better. I closed my eyes, feeling tears prick behind my lids. Thank you for saying that, Anna. It means more than you know. I don't expect everything to be fixed overnight, she continued. I know I have to earn back your trust, but I wanted you to know I'm trying. I can see that you are, I said gently, and I appreciate it. After we hung up, I sat in the growing darkness, surrounded by the sounds of evening, crickets chirping, a dog barking in the distance, the rustle of leaves in the breeze. A year ago, I'd been a woman who measured her worth by what she could give others, who accepted crumbs of affection in exchange for financial support, who'd forgotten she deserved better. Now I was someone different, someone who knew that love without respect is incomplete, that generosity without appreciation is unsustainable, that being a good mother doesn't mean being a doormat. The journey had been painful, but necessary. And as I went inside to prepare dinner, just for myself, in my own home, at my own pace, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. I felt free. The weeks passed and my life settled into a beautiful routine. I woke when I wanted, spent mornings in my greenhouse, afternoons volunteering at the library or tending my garden. Sophie and Max's visits became regular fixtures, every other weekend, sometimes more. Their presence filled my home with the kind of chaos I'd missed. Lego pieces scattered across the living room floor. Sophie's debate team notes spread across the kitchen table. Max's science experiments taking over the counter. Anna's communication evolved from terse text messages to occasional phone calls. Nothing profound. Questions about recipes, updates on the kids' activities, small talk about the changing seasons. But each call was a thread, slowly weaving something new between us. One Saturday in late November, as I was raking leaves in my front yard, Anna's car pulled up. Not to drop off the children, but alone. She got out slowly, her hands buried in her coat pockets, her expression uncertain. "Hi, Mom," she said, stopping at the edge of my driveway. "Do you have a few minutes?" I leaned the rake against the oak tree. "Of course, come in. I'll make coffee." Inside, I busied myself with the coffee maker while Anna sat at the kitchen table, the same spot where she'd sat months ago, angry and desperate. Now she just looked tired, but in a different way. Not exhausted from fighting, but from honest work and honest reflection. "The kids talk about you constantly," she said finally, accepting the mug I handed her. "Sophie wants to know if you'll help with her debate about climate policy. Max is already planning his birthday cake flavors for next September." "I'm always happy to help," I replied, settling into my chair. "And Max knows I'll bake whatever he wants." "I know," Anna wrapped her hands around the mug, staring into it as if searching for words in the steam. That's the thing, Mom. You've always been there, always giving, and I just took and took without ever really seeing you. I stayed quiet, letting her work through whatever she'd come to say. Working at the furniture store, taking these business classes, it's opened my eyes to a lot of things. She looked up at me, her eyes red-rimmed. I watched other families come in, mothers and daughters shopping together, really talking to each other, and I realized we never had that. Not because you didn't try, but because I didn't let us. Anna, no, please let me finish. She took a shaky breath. That Mother's Day, when I uninvited you, it wasn't about Lucas's mother or the country club. It was about me being ashamed that we needed your money, ashamed that I couldn't provide the life I wanted on my own. So I excluded you, because having you there would have been a reminder of my own inadequacy. The honesty of it struck me silent. I'd imagined many reasons for that rejection, but never this one. And when you cut off the money, I was so angry because it forced me to face what I'd been avoiding, that I'd built a life I couldn't actually afford, and worse, that I'd sacrificed my relationship with you to maintain the illusion. Tears spilled down her cheeks. I don't expect you to forgive me, Mom. I don't know if I'd forgive me, but I needed you to know I understand now. What I did, what I lost. I reached across the table and took her hand. I'm not going to say it's all okay, because it wasn't. What you did hurt me deeply. But I can see you've changed, Anna, and I'm willing to keep rebuilding with you. She squeezed my hand, crying openly now. I don't deserve, maybe not, I said gently. But love isn't always about deserving. It's about choosing every day to do better, to be better. We sat like that for a long time, hands clasped across my kitchen table, while outside the November wind scattered leaves across my yard. Thanksgiving arrived with an invitation I hadn't expected. Anna called a week before, her voice hesitant but hopeful. Mom, would you like to come for Thanksgiving? I know the apartment is small, but we'd really like you there, if you're comfortable with it. I thought about the Thanksgivings of previous years. Elaborate affairs at the Lindenberg house, where I'd arrived with side dishes Anna had assigned me but never acknowledged. Where I'd sat at the far end of the table, conversations flowing around me but rarely to me. What time should I come? I asked. 2:00? And Mom, just bring yourself. I've got the food covered. The apartment on Route 31 was indeed small, but Anna had transformed it. Autumn decorations I'd never seen before, tasteful, not overdone, adorned the living room. The dining table, barely big enough for 5, was set with mismatched dishes that somehow worked together. The smell of roasting turkey filled the space. Grandma, Max barreled into me as soon as I walked in. I helped make the stuffing. Well, mostly I ate the bread cubes, but Mom says that's helping. Sophie hugged me next, more reserved but no less genuine. I finished that climate policy debate. Want to hear my opening statement later? I'd love to, I assured her. Lucas shook my hand, then, surprising me, pulled me into a brief hug. Good to have you here, Elizabeth. Anna emerged from the kitchen, flushed from cooking, wearing an apron I'd given her years ago that I'd never seen her use. Mom, hi, I'm so glad you're here. The meal was simple but delicious. Anna had made turkey, mashed potatoes, green bean casserole, and yes, my recipe for cranberry sauce. She'd called me 3 times that week to make sure she got it right. As we ate, conversation flowed naturally. Sophie talked about debate team. Max explained his latest Lego creation in exhaustive detail. Lucas shared a story about a difficult client who'd finally agreed to list their home. Anna even laughed at one of my stories about a particularly colorful library patron from my working days. After dinner, as Anna and I cleaned up while the others watched football in the living room, she said quietly, "Thank you for coming. I know it couldn't have been easy." It was easier than I expected, I admitted. This feels different, real. It is different. She handed me a plate to dry. I'm different. We're living within our means for the first time in our marriage. I'm working, contributing. Lucas and I actually talk about finances instead of just assuming money will appear. She paused. We're not wealthy, but we're honest. That's worth more than I realized. I'm proud of you, I said, meaning it. Her eyes filled with tears, but she smiled. That means everything, Mom. December brought more small moments of connection. Anna invited me to help pick out a Christmas tree, something she'd never asked before. We spent an afternoon at a tree farm, Sophie and Max running between the rows while Anna and I walked more slowly, discussing which trees were full enough, tall enough, the right shape for their living room. "Remember when you used to take me to get trees when I was little?" Anna said suddenly. "After Dad died, and you'd let me pick whichever one I wanted, even the scraggly ones I thought looked sad and needed a home." "I remember," I said. "You always chose the underdogs." "I'd forgotten that about myself," she mused. "When I started only wanting perfect things. The perfect house, the perfect image, the perfect life. Perfect is overrated," I said. "Present is better." She looped her arm through mine, a gesture of affection I hadn't felt from her in years. "Yeah, it really is. Christmas Day was at my house this year. My suggestion, which Anna accepted with visible relief. She and Lucas brought food, the kids brought excited energy, and we spent the day in comfortable chaos. Max's Lego creation took over my coffee table. Sophie read aloud from the book I'd given her. We played board games, ate too much, and laughed until our sides hurt when Max's homemade eggnog turned out to be more cinnamon than egg. As evening fell and they prepared to leave, Anna pulled me aside. "Mom, I got you something." She handed me a small wrapped box. "It's not much, but..." Inside was a delicate silver bracelet with 3 charms, a book, a rose, and a small heart. Simple but meaningful. "The book for your years at the library," Anna explained softly. "The rose for your garden, and the heart for, well, for everything you are to us, everything I couldn't see for too long." I put it on immediately, feeling the weight of it on my wrist, light but present, like the relationship we were rebuilding. "Thank you, Anna, it's perfect." She hugged me then, a real hug, and whispered, "I love you, Mom. I'm so sorry it took me so long to show it properly." "I love you too," I replied, "and we're getting there." As winter turned to spring, the rhythm of our new normal became established. I saw Sophie and Max regularly. Anna and I talked on the phone weekly, sometimes about nothing important, sometimes about deeper things, her business classes, my travel plans, the complicated work of forgiveness and rebuilding trust. One April afternoon, Anna stopped by unannounced, which no longer felt like an intrusion but like the comfortable presumption of family who knows they're welcome. I got accepted into the small business development program at the community college, she said, her face glowing with pride and nervousness. "It's competitive, and there's a mentorship component with established business owners." "Anna, that's wonderful." I pulled her into a hug. "When does it start?" "Fall semester. It'll be a lot of work on top of my job, but I'm ready. And Mom," she pulled back to look at me directly, "I'm doing this the right way. No cutting corners, no assumptions that money will magically appear. Just hard work and smart planning. That's all anyone can ask for," I said. "And for what it's worth, I believe in you." Her eyes shimmered. "That means more than you know." By the time Mother's Day rolled around again, a full year since Anna had uninvited me, since I'd canceled, the mortgage payments, since everything had changed, I woke with a sense of peace I'd never expected to feel about this day. My phone rang early. Sophie. "Happy Mother's Day, Grandma. Are you ready for today?" "Ready for what?" I asked, intrigued. "It's a surprise. Dad's picking you up at 11. Wear something nice but comfortable." When Lucas arrived, he wouldn't tell me where we were going, just smiled mysteriously as we drove. Finally, we pulled up to a park I'd visited often when Anna was young. The same park where I'd pushed her on swings, where she'd learned to ride a bike, where we'd had countless picnics before life got complicated. Anna, Sophie, and Max were there, standing beside a picnic table laden with food. Not catered food or country club brunch, but homemade dishes I recognized. Some Anna's attempts at my recipes, some store-bought with no pretense otherwise, all arranged with care. "Happy Mother's Day, Mom," Anna said as I approached. Her voice caught slightly. "I thought we should celebrate here, where it started, where you were always there, even when I didn't appreciate it." We ate lunch in that park, 5 of us around a picnic table, while other families played nearby and spring sunshine filtered through new leaves. Sophie told jokes. Max showed me his latest Lego creation in exhaustive detail. Lucas grilled hot dogs. Anna and I sat side by side, our shoulders touching, watching our family with something like contentment. "This is perfect," I said softly to Anna. "It's not fancy," she replied, a trace of old insecurity in her voice. "No," I agreed. "It's better. It's honest." After lunch, Sophie pulled out a wrapped package. "This is from all of us." Inside was a photo album. Not a store-bought book, but one clearly assembled by hand, with photos spanning the past year. Me and Sophie in the greenhouse, Max covered in flour from baking, the family at Thanksgiving. Christmas morning chaos. Small moments I hadn't realized anyone was documenting. The first page had a handwritten note in Anna's careful script. To Mom, this year taught us that family isn't about perfect houses, or perfect brunches, or perfect anything. It's about showing up, being honest, and choosing each other even when it's hard. Thank you for loving us through our worst and believing we could become better. You deserve more than we gave you for so many years, but we're trying to become the family you always deserved. With love and gratitude, Anna, Lucas, Sophie, and Maxie closed the album, unable to speak past the lump in my throat. Sophie hugged me from one side, Max from the other. Anna rested her head on my shoulder. Lucas stood behind us, his hand on Anna's back. We weren't perfect. Our history was complicated, marked by hurt and healing that would probably never be complete. But we were here. We were trying. And that, I'd learned, was enough. That evening, after they'd gone home and I sat on my porch, with tea and Gerda's company, I reflected on the year that had passed. "You did good, Lisa," Gerda said, her voice uncharacteristically soft. "Standing your ground, making them face consequences, not backing down." "It was the hardest thing I've ever done," I admitted. Walking away from Anna, even temporarily. Risking my relationship with Sophie and Max. But look what it built. Gerda gestured toward the photo album sitting on my lap. Real relationships, honest ones, built on respect, not just obligation or guilt or money. She was right. The woman I'd been a year ago, the one who measured her worth in monthly mortgage payments and accepted scraps of affection as if they were treasure. That woman was gone. In her place was someone I was still getting to know, but liked more every day. Someone who understood that love without boundaries isn't really love at all. That generosity without reciprocity breeds resentment. That being needed is not the same as being valued. Someone who knew that sometimes you have to lose everything to discover what truly matters. Summer arrived with its long golden evenings. My greenhouse flourished. Sophie came to help with the garden, and we talked about her plans for high school, her dreams of maybe studying environmental law. Max continued his Lego empire, now taking over one corner of my garage. Anna's business course progressed well, and she'd started developing a business plan for a sustainable interior design consultancy. One evening in July, as fireflies began their dance in my backyard, I sat with a cup of tea and thought about Klaus. If he could see me now, strong in ways I'd never been when he was alive, standing firm in my boundaries while remaining open to reconciliation, I thought he'd be proud. "I learned, Klaus," I whispered to the evening air. "It took me long enough, but I learned." The wind rustled through my roses, and I chose to take it as acknowledgement. By the time fall arrived again, 2 years since that fateful Mother's Day, my life had a fullness I'd never imagined. Regular dinners with Anna's family, now comfortable and easy. Weekly phone calls with Sophie about everything and nothing. Max's birthday cakes that had become legendary in their neighborhood. My garden, my greenhouse, my travels. I'd returned to Italy and was planning a trip to Ireland. And Anna. My complicated, flawed human daughter who'd hurt me deeply and was slowly, painstakingly making amends. We would never have a fairy tale relationship, but what we had was real, built on truth and effort, and mutual respect. One Saturday, as we worked together in my garden, something she'd started doing voluntarily, without being asked, she said, "Mom, I've been thinking about getting you a plaque for out here. Maybe something like Elizabeth's Garden, or how about Where It All Began?" I suggested. She looked at me questioningly. "This garden," I explained, gesturing around us. "This is where I started finding myself again, where I decided I was worth more than being taken for granted, where I learned that pruning isn't destruction, it's creating space for new growth." Anna was quiet for a moment, then nodded slowly. "I like that. Where it all began. Because it's not just your garden anymore, is it? It's where our new relationship started too." "Exactly," I said. We worked in companionable silence after that, side by side in the afternoon sun, planting bulbs that would bloom next spring, building something that would last. If you enjoyed my story, you can encourage me to write more by sending a donation. Thank you from the bottom of my heart. As I finish telling you this story, sitting on my porch on a cool October evening with a blanket across my lap and tea growing cold beside me, I want you to know something important. This wasn't a story about punishment or revenge. It was about rediscovering worth, my own worth, independent of what I could give others. It was about teaching the people I love that relationships require mutual respect, not just one person's endless sacrifice. Was it worth it? The pain, the confrontation, the risk? Yes. 1,000 times yes. Because the woman I am now, confident, boundaried, respected, is the woman I should have been all along. And the relationship I have with Anna now, imperfect as it is built on a foundation that can actually hold weight. Sophie is 14 now, wise beyond her years, planning to run for student council president. Max is 11, still building Lego empires, but also starting to cook with me, learning the recipes I learned from my mother. Anna is preparing to launch her business next spring, excited and nervous in equal measure. Lucas has become a genuine friend, someone I can talk to without guardedness. And me? I'm 69 years old, living in a small house with a beautiful garden, surrounded by people who see me, really see me, not for what I can provide, but for who I am. I won't tell you that everything is perfect. Anna and I still have difficult moments. Sometimes old patterns try to reassert themselves, but now we have tools to address them, words to name what's happening, and a shared commitment to doing better. The mortgage is long paid off. The house in Lindenberg belongs to someone else now. The money I save each month goes into my own accounts, funding my own dreams. Sophie and Max have their education secured, regardless of their parents' financial situation. And every Mother's Day since that first one, I've been genuinely welcomed, not grudgingly included, but truly wanted. Last year, Max made me a card that said, "To the best grandma who taught us that love means respecting people, not just needing them." I keep it on my refrigerator, next to Sophie's debate team photo and a postcard from Florence. These small things, these honest, real, respectful small things, are what I fought for, what I risked everything for. And looking at them now, I know I made the right choice. If you're reading this and seeing yourself in my story, if you're the one being taken for granted, the one whose generosity goes unappreciated, the one who wonders if you're worth more than how others treat you, I want you to know, you are. You are worth respect. You are worth consideration. You are worth being seen as a whole person, not just a resource. And sometimes, loving people means teaching them to treat you better, even if, especially if, it's hard. My name is Elizabeth Weber. I'm a mother, a grandmother, a gardener, a traveler, a friend. And I finally learned, at 67 years old, that I'm enough exactly as I am. That knowledge was worth every difficult moment it took to claim it. The sun is setting now over my garden. The roses I pruned this spring bloomed more beautifully than ever this summer. The greenhouse Sophie and Max helped me build stands sturdy against the autumn wind. And inside my small house, the photo album from last Mother's Day sits on my bookshelf. A testament to how far we've all come. Tomorrow, Anna is bringing the kids over for Sunday dinner, a new tradition we've started. We'll eat pot roast. She's finally mastered the recipe, and the kids will do their homework at my kitchen table, and Anna and I will talk about her business plans while doing dishes. It's ordinary. It's simple. It's real. And after 40 years of measuring my worth in grand gestures and silent sacrifices, I've learned that ordinary, simple, and real are actually extraordinary. That's the ending I fought for, and it was worth every moment.